Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part one of the Work Zone Traffic Control and Safety course. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation in this training. Please note that today's session is the first of a five-part webinar series, with parts 2 and 3 on Thursday and parts 4 and 5 next week. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the course presentation, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have, and I'll be dispatching those periodically to the instructor. Please note also that the handouts section of your GoToWebinar panel includes a PDF copy of today's presentation for reference. With that, we'll go ahead and turn things over to our instructor, Ray Brushart, who is a program manager and safety circuit rider here at the Ohio LTAP Center. Ray, hello.
Hello, Mike. Thank you for that introduction.
Yes.
Appreciate that. And Mike and I are happy to host everybody here today for our Work Zone Traffic Control and Safety webinar series. This is part one. And as Mike said, we'll have parts 1 through 3 this week and 4 and 5 next week. So we're hoping that you'll get everything out of this course that you want to get out of it. Everybody will get certificates, by the way, for being here today. For each part, you'll get a certificate of for 1.5 contact hours. A little bit about me for my background in work zone traffic control. I started out back in with ODOT back in the early 90s, and I was in the traffic operations section of what was called the Bureau of Traffic. How about that? Of course, now they're all offices of traffic engineering and roadway engineering and stuff like that. But I did a lot of roadway safety studies and traffic impact studies, and got a little background in work zone design at that time. And then I left ODOT and went to the city of Columbus for about 15 years. And I had some good experience in setting up work zones for the city, for mostly for private development projects, because I reviewed a lot of rezonings and traffic impact studies, and we developed roadway projects based on those studies at that time. And then I came back to ODOT about 10 years ago and joined the LTAP Center. And here with LTAP, I teach a lot of not just these work zone classes, but other roadway safety type of courses and things like that. I help out with as a safety circuit rider. I also help out things like our townships in Ohio. We purchase all their. We have a special grant where we purchase their roadway signs, and I help them figure out where all their roadway signs go, like in the curves and intersections and things like that. And of course, we get into some work zone and flagging training for all the local governments in Ohio as well. So that's a little bit about my background. But for today's class, we're going to be talking about work zone traffic control and safety. We'll get into, we want to make sure that all the road users are safe as they travel through our work zones, but also all the workers are safe as well. So this class is intended to review the basic elements and typical applications of work zones for temporary traffic control. Anytime you see the letters TTC, that stands for temporary traffic control, is just another way of saying work zone traffic control. And then we'll get into, today we'll be beginning to look at the different temporary traffic control devices, such as signage that we use for our advanced warning area of our work zones. And we'll get into the different devices, such as signs, cones, drums, barricades, arrow panels, things like that. And then as we progress through the different parts of this webinar series, we'll get into some other parts. I'll show that in a minute, the agenda. I'll also be referencing part 6 of the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. I'll even show you how to find a copy of the manual online, so you can look at it for free at any time you want, right on your computer. I'll also show you how you can order your own copy of it, or even go into the ODOT office on West Broad Street and buy your own manual there in person if you want. And we'll be throughout the course, we'll be taking a look at rural roadways and also urban roadways. So here's the learning objectives for our course. We want you to gain a basic understanding and awareness of temporary traffic control, different concepts and standards. Standards is an important word for us in this course. It's when you say standards, that means it's things that you must include, you shall include in your work zone design, like certain signs must be present in certain situations, or certain devices, or a certain length of a cone taper, and things like that. And we also want to stress the importance of work zone traffic control and safety. It's very important that we follow along the different typical applications and have your signage placed properly according to these different typical applications. So the agenda for our webinar series is here on this screen. Today we're going to be going over fundamental principles of work zone traffic control, and we'll get into the different traffic control devices and safety hardware. And we'll try to get through all of lesson 2 today. Probably sometimes we end up being a little short. We don't want to keep you longer than the hour and a half. And then on Thursday morning, we'll get into lesson 3, elements of a traffic control plan, and probably get into a little bit of lesson 4, which is the work zone traffic control layouts. And then next week, we'll begin the flagging operation session and moving and mobile operation sections, and we'll end up the final day probably talking about mobile and then street closures. And then we'll have our design workshop where we take, we look at everything that you've learned, and give you some exercises, and see if you can figure out how to design work zones for several different situations on different types of roadways, from 2-lane rural roads all the way up to even a freeway.
Ray, if you want, we could do the first poll question at any time.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. So I thought I had launched it. Let's try it again. Okay, here we go. We've launched the first poll question. Who is in attendance today? Which answer best represents who you work for? And we will give everybody some time to respond. And we see those responses arriving already. So let's see, about 80% have voted already. We'll give a few more seconds. Okay. So Ray, the results are 53% of this group is with city or village government, 5% is with county government, 0% with township, 7% with state government, and 36% said consultant or other.
All right. Sounds like a good mix. So we've even got our consultants here. So if I need some experts, I'm glad they're here, right, Mike?
Very good.
All right. So let's go ahead and begin lesson 1, which is the fundamental principles behind our work zone traffic control design. Okay, so first of all, the temporary traffic control manual lists the different purposes of temporary traffic control, and here they are. The top 4 reasons we have temporary traffic control is: number 1, we need to warn the motorists and pedestrians are all road users, you know, the big trucks, the motorcycles, as well, of the upcoming work zone they're about to face. We need to give them plenty of advance warning. And as part of this class, as we talk about, you know, different speed limits and the different number of lanes on roadways from 2 to 4 or even 5 to, of course, some freeways have 8 lanes or whatever, but they all have a different length in advance where we need to begin our signage when we have lane closures and things like that. And then we need to advise them of the proper travel path around our work zones, and we do that with our different temporary traffic control devices, and with either cones or drums, or even barricades in some, maybe even concrete barriers in some cases. We need to delineate the areas for them not to use, and to do a good job of separating their travel area from our work area. And we define our temporary traffic control in our work zones as a system to communicate with road users to safely guide them through a roadway affected by construction or reconstruction, maintenance activities, utility operations, disasters, special events, and incidents. So where do all these rules and regulations come from? I guess you could say they come straight from the top, from the Federal Highway Administration and U.S. Department of Transportation. They publish our National Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And so here on the screen is a picture of the latest manual. Yes, the latest manual from the National Manual is the 2009 edition, but they are working quite aggressively on publishing the next one. This is probably the longest time they've gone without publishing a new one, but they've really been conducting a lot of research in the last 4 or 5 years on different things about work zones, different typical applications, new devices, new technologies, and such, and a lot of data. You're trying to make each typical application safer for both the road user and the workers. And so here we have our national standards, and they apply to all roads open to public travel. And so each state in the United States has the option. They can either just abide by the national manual, or they can publish their own manual that goes above and beyond the national manual. And so that's what Ohio has elected to do. So in Ohio, we abide by the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And the picture on the screen is what the current manual looks like. It's the 2012 edition, is the latest edition. And there's 9 parts to this manual. You know, there's like a general part about traffic control devices. And there's parts for like different signs. There's a part for pavement markings. There's another one for school zones and railroad crossings, and what else? Low volume roads has its own part, but there's 9 parts, and the part that we're interested in today is part 6. And part 6 of the OMUTCD has its own title. It's called the Temporary Traffic Control Manual. So the Temporary Traffic Control Manual and Part 6 of the OMUTCD, they're one and the same. They're the same thing. And so our manual here establishes the standards for design and use of traffic control devices on all public roads in Ohio. And it's not just a good idea that we abide by this manual. It's actually the state law that we abide by this manual when we're out there working on the roadways. We must set up our work zones according to this manual. And it says so right in the Ohio Revised Code, sections 4511.09 through 4511.11. And that part of the Ohio Revised Code states that local authorities, so that means you guys in the cities and villages, townships, and the county engineer's offices, says you shall place and maintain traffic control devices in accordance with this manual and the specifications for a uniform system of traffic control devices. Uniform system, that's what we're striving for, uniformity. So if you're setting up a flagging operation on a 2-lane rural road in Hamilton County, it should look basically the same as a flagging operation that's set up in Ottawa County, so that's what we're striving for. The same signage, the same spacing of the signs, number of cones in the taper, the stop slow paddle, how the flagger uses the stop slow paddle, they should all be the same. So that's what we're striving for, because that makes our work zone safer. So a little bit about the OMUTCD. It's published by ODOT, and Part 6 deals with temporary traffic control zones. And the manual receives input from a statewide committee made up of public and private sector officials. And they usually meet on a quarterly basis. And that is to review maybe any changes from the national manual. And then if there was any changes to the national manual, then then we also abide by those changes as well. Typical application. So what we're going to learn about these typical application is there's different types of roadways in Ohio, right? Or all over the U.S. We begin with our 2-lane rural roads and go all the way up the chain to our multi-lane freeways, and then everything in between. So there's a lot of variables on each one of these types of roadways. Also, where we set up our work zone is different. The location of the work, maybe we're just working on the shoulder, maybe we're working in 1 lane, or maybe we're closing 2 lanes. The roadway type, the geometrics of the roadway, from a curvy, hilly road to a freeway that's straight for miles, vertical and horizontal alignments. Maybe we're working at intersections, maybe we're working at an interchange. The volumes of traffic, the road vehicle mix, and of course the speed of traffic. Each one of these affects the needs of each work zone. And so there's 46 different typical applications in the temporary traffic control manual. And each one shows you different situations and what you need to do in order to set up your work zone. So it's like each typical application has a drawing of the situation with it lists the signage and things like that, the tapers and buffer space recommendations. And then there's another page that goes with it, the notes page. And we'll see that it has things like standards and options and guidance and things like that to think about in your design. And these typical applications, they need to be altered when necessary to fit the conditions of a particular temporary traffic control zone. So when we look at these typical applications, you'll see that there are standards. We call that the shall condition. You must have the signs and things set up to meet the standards. And then there's the guidance. We call that the should condition. So you should include the guidance unless you have a really good reason not to. And then we get into the options, which serve to make your work zone as safe as possible. And so I call the standard guidance and options, I call them safe, safer, and safest. And we get into the options, especially when we have high speed traffic and high volume and maybe sight distance restrictions and things like that. They show different ways to provide more advanced warning and safer traffic control. Like maybe they suggest devices like a truck mounted attenuator or something as an example of things that you'll find in the options. So as we open up the manual and check out different typical applications, you'll see that the standards are written in the large bold text, and the guidance is shown in italic text, but not bold. And then the options are shown in a smaller size text. So here's an example of a notes page from a typical application. This particular one is number 17 and is titled Mobile Operations on a Two-Lane Road. So maybe some of the people in class today, maybe you conduct some work on two-lane roads, and in certain situations, you prefer to have a mobile operation. Um, maybe about this time of year, between now and April, maybe you're out there temporarily patching potholes, and you do it as in a mobile operation. But as you can see on this page, we have standards up here in the bold text, and we have guidance and options. So, for instance, if you're in this particular mobile operations, the things that you have to have, for instance, is not like number 2. It says shadow and work vehicles shall display high intensity rotating, flashing, oscillating, or strobe lights. So in this mobile operation, it's not just a good idea to have your high intensity flashing lights turned on. It's actually the state law. You must have those on in that situation. And if you're going to use an arrow board in this on a two-lane road, you don't want the arrow mode turned on. You want it to be in caution mode. So we'll be learning more about arrow boards later, but the caution mode is not an arrow. It's usually the four corners are lit up of the arrow board. And so you have guidance, and which talks about how to even to make it even a little bit safer. Talks about the shadow vehicle. It should slow down in advance of vertical or horizontal curves that restrict sight distance. So it's telling you that the shadow vehicle should never disappear over a hill or around a curve for the oncoming traffic. It has to, the shadow vehicle must remain visible to the approaching traffic. And then options, it has different options to make it even safer. One of those it talks about is law enforcement vehicles may be used for shadow vehicles. That's an idea to make it safer. And it also mentions the truck mounted attenuator may be used on the shadow vehicle or on the work vehicle. So that's some examples of standard guidance and options. So here's how to get your own copy. If you want a physical copy of the temporary traffic control manual, you can call our 1-800 number here, 1-800-459-3778 here at the bottom of the screen, and that is the number for the ODOT Office of Contracts. They are the office that is charged with distributing our different reference manuals, and looks like the price is $12 per copy. And then I'll even show you how to find a free copy, and that's online. So here's our Ohio LTAP webpage. Can you see that, Mike?
Yes, yeah, looks good, Ray.
Okay, so if you go to our Ohio LTAP page, and there's other places on the ODOT website to find the manual, but we provide a convenient little icon to click on. So if you just scroll down, this is our home page for Ohio LTAP. If you scroll down our page, you see a lot of different things to click on. We have available training. You can see what courses are coming up or webinars. We have technical assistance and services to click on. We have our e-learning catalog to click on, and we have resources. And so if you click on resources, then when that page pops up, you see we have lots of different resources for you guys. If you scroll down the screen, you can in the second row, right here it is, the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So you can just click on this link. It takes you to this page that's devoted to the manual. And then you can scroll down to the bottom of this page. And then here we have each one of the different parts of the OMUTCD. And so you can see the different parts we have. Part 1 is the general chapter for the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And then you have signs. Part 3 is pavement markings. Part 4 is traffic signals. Part 5 is traffic control devices for low volume roads. So maybe the people from the county engineer's office, I'm sure you have some low volume roads in your county. Then part 6 is right here, temporary traffic control. Then part 7 is their school zones, and part 8 is railroad crossings, and part 9 is bicycle facilities. And then we have different appendices to look into. So you can just click on the icon beside part 6, this little icon, and then your the manual will pop right up. And so here it is. Here's the manual. So when I say typical applications, you can just, they're all pretty much down towards the end of the manual. So here's the different typical applications. So it just kind of zeroed in, and I landed in the 20s. Let me zoom out a little bit. So here's an example of an intersection. Left lane closure on the far side of an intersection. So it's, you know, the hatched out area is where you're actually working. And so as you can see, it's a 4-lane roadway intersecting with a 2-lane roadway. Maybe the people in today's class from the cities or villages, maybe you have an intersection that looks like this. But if you happen to be maybe working in this particular lane, then it would show you the exact signs to use. Your road work ahead, followed by left lane closed ahead. And it has a sign. It's the symbol of the left lane merging over into the right lane. And then here we have a sign that's not orange. So it says left lane must turn left. We can use that here. And then you can look at the cones. You can even zoom in how the cones are placed. They actually created a left turn pocket for people to get into here. And then on the far side, they show an arrow panel. So, you know, this would be, we get into another thing called work duration. But if you're going to be out there for, you know, maybe more than an hour, maybe all day, then you would need to set up this work zone just like you see it here. And we have different things to look at with work duration. Maybe you're only going to be out there for 15 minutes or something like that. Then we can suggest other things to do, you know, as far as the work zone setup. So we'll get into work zone duration in another part of this course. But I just wanted to show you a quick way on how to find the the temporary traffic control manual through the Ohio LTAP web page. And then also we have some other resources on our website that deal with work zone traffic control. So if we go back to our home page and we scroll down, we can click on technical assistance and services. So if you clicked on this link, then this page would open up, technical assistance, and you can scroll down and we have different things to check out here. But one of them I wanted to show you was this route of navigation series, or the RON series, we call it. And it provides job aids and Ohio focused information for local government employees. And so when you get to the RON series page, you scroll down and you see we have different categories. And so we have a work zone category. So if you click on categories, it breaks it down to the different categories, and then it's alphabetical. So if you go to, they begin on page 7 for work zone. See work zone safety down here at the bottom. It starts out with designing your flagging operation. So you can click on that, and our run update will open up, and it's got like a 5 or 6 page technical brief on how to set up your flagging operation to make it as safe as possible. And then when you click over to page 8, you'll see that we have several other work zone run updates. Here's a mobile work zone operations for a 2-lane roadway, um, preventing the spread of infectious disease in highway work zones. We just uh, printed that out last year for the pandemic. We get into worker safety considerations for working in a work zone. You can download the work zone pocket guide, and you see other things in here, work zone safety quiz, things like that. So I just wanted to show off our Ohio LTAP website a little bit on the different things you can find there for different categories. We have lots of resources on there. And we just redesigned our website, so it's a total redesign. We even had a webinar on our updated website about a month ago, so people could figure out how to use it. Okay, so another resource we have besides the manual is this pocket guide. And I call it the little green flip book, but it's called Guidelines for Traffic Control in Work Zones. And of course, since it's just a small booklet, it obviously doesn't have all the information that the big manual has, but it's intended to provide the principles of proper work zone traffic control, mostly for roadway maintenance activities. And so some of the things that you'll find in this booklet is there's several pages that are devoted to the specifications for different traffic control devices. And it's got some tables on there that help you design your work zone. And we will definitely be getting familiar with this particular table on page 17. And it's got 3 little tables on that page. One is the top one shows us how to properly space our advanced warning signs, depending on what type of road we're on. And then the middle table shows us how to space our cones or drums properly. And then the bottom table shows us how to determine how long of a taper we need, depending on the type of taper we're using. And then it has some of the more common typical applications that are associated with roadway maintenance activities, like flagging and mobile operations, and lane closures on a multi-lane road or intersection work, things like that. It also has this neat little work activity matrix at the back of the booklet, and it'll help you select a typical application based on the type of work that you're doing that day. Like for instance, if you're patching potholes on a 2-lane road, you can go across the line and it'll suggest different ones. So this typical application number 10 is if you're on a regular or kind of a busy type of 2-lane roadway, then that's a flagging operation. And then um, number 17 is a mobile operation. It might even be 11. 11 is for a low volume road. And so where you wouldn't necessarily need a flagger to close the lane because the volume is low and there's good sight distance and things like that. So it shows you how to set up a lane closure in that situation. So that's an example of how you can use this work activity matrix. So if you want to get copies of this pocket guide for your employees, here's how you can do that. You can call this 1-800 number. It's the same number as for the manual, and you can order these. They're like $3 a piece. But then you also saw when I was showing the website how you can download your own copy for free through the the RON update. Local standards. So as we look at the different typical applications, especially if you're from a city or a village, you'll probably you probably know of some roadways in your own city that don't look like any of the typical applications. So in that case, um, you need to come up with your own local standards. And I like to brag about the city of Dublin. I think there's somebody from Dublin in today's class, but Dublin has their own booklet of work zone setups on different types of roadways. You know, Dublin is famous for their roundabouts, amongst other things, but you know, they have some really good local standards on closing lanes and the different roundabouts they have. You know, they have single lane roundabouts, they've got 2-lane roundabouts, and then they have that famous roundabout there at 161 and Riverside Drive that has 3 lanes in the middle of it. So, but they do a good job of defining their own local standards and what they expect from their employees as they close lanes in these different types of roundabouts. So then there's other, I was talking to a guy from Talmadge, Ohio, and Talmadge and Upper Arlington, Ohio, they have something in common. They both have a 5-legged intersection in their cities. And so you won't find how to close down lanes in a 5-legged intersection in the manual, but you know, they set up their own standards and what they expect when their employees do that. So those are some instances where, you know, there are roadway conditions or designs that you're not going to find a typical application for. So you really need, you know, you can use, and it's talked about in the manual, you can use the other typical applications to help you figure out how to set up your work zones in those situations. But instead of making your employees try to, or their supervisors or your city engineer try to design the situation every time they're out there, start from scratch, you should, you know, set up your own local standards. That way it makes it easier. All right, let's talk about another reason we set up our work zones the way the manual tells us to, and that is to make it as safe as possible for the road users, you know, and the vehicles that are driving by, but also the workers. And that is we want to lower the crashes in our work zones in Ohio. So there are crashes in work zones. And so let's talk about some statistics from these work zones. But first, let's take a quiz. And you can write your answers in the, how would they do this, Mike? Write it in the message box or chat box?
They could send it through the questions box, sure.
Okay, so let's take a multiple choice question here. How many work zone fatalities happened in 2019 in Ohio? A, B, C, D, or E?
Okay, we have answers arriving already. People are saying answers D and E. We have a few saying B. We have several more saying D, C, D, and E. Okay, a lot of folks are saying D.
So we didn't get any A's.
Nope. We had a
Well,
few that said B,
mhm.
a few that said C, many who said D, and a few that said E.
All right. Well, we wish the answer was A, but it's sad. I'm sad to report that it's not A. But the good news is it's not E or D, but the answer is C. Correct answer C. 16 people lost their lives in work zones in 2019 in Ohio. So if I had to ask you guys a question based on that answer, um, let's throw another question in there. What do you think? What percentage of the 16 were motorists? If we go motorists versus workers, how many of the 16, you can put it in percentage, um, were motorists that year?
Okay, let's see, 15%, 5%, 25, 33, 20, 10, 25, 65, 25, 50, 75, 50, 20. So lots of different answers.
Oh, those are good
50.
answers. Um, Usually, I don't know why, but always usually works out right around 20% of work zone fatalities. Let me see. Let me get this right. So, no, wait, it's 80%. 80% are motorists. 20% are the workers. So, and it's usually right around that mix every year, give or take. But it's always a lot more motorists. So, can we think of some reasons why? See if you can give me some reasons why you think there's always significantly more motorists than workers being killed.
So we'll see if anybody types in answers. Okay, distracted driving, texting and driving, cell phone, texting, not enough signage. Okay, texting again, texting and driving, weather, cell phones, sun glare possible, speed, negligence,
Right.
um,
Okay.
distracted driving, drunk driving.
Yes. Well, work zone crashes are a lot like the crashes that don't involve work zones, all the other crashes in Ohio. And if we broke down each crash in Ohio, and there's three main reasons why a crash occurs. One is maybe it's the driver, the driver's fault. Maybe they were speeding, maybe they're under the influence, distracted, things like that. Um, then there's the roadway itself. Well, let's say the vehicle. There's also the vehicle. Maybe the vehicle, maybe a wheel fell off or the brakes went out or something like that. Then there's the roadway itself. That maybe the roadway was the reason for the crash. Maybe it was icy conditions or wet roadways or just bad pavement, big pothole, right? Um, or maybe the proper signage was not there, things like that. So, as people that work, their job is to take care of roadways. We really want to strive so that the reason for the crash is not the roadway. We don't want the reason for any crash to be the fault of the roadway. We strive to make sure that everything is set up from the pavement to the traffic uh, parts of the roadway. Signage, pavement markings, uh, things like that. But when it comes to work zones, um, some of the reasons for these crashes mostly are the driver. Maybe they are under the influence or speeding. I mean, today we have an epidemic for speeding in Ohio. Take an instance for last year. In 2020, the worst year ever, right, for people. The traffic volumes on the roads were significantly lower last year, at least for regular vehicles, not trucks. Um, but there was more fatalities last year, significantly more fatalities than the year before. And a lot of that involves speeding. I mean, it could be speeding mixed in with something else, like under the influence or distracted or whatever. But speeding was part of the reason why behind these fatal crashes. But speeding through work zones, the driver under the influence or distracted, these are all um, reasons for work zone crashes. Um, but our job is, when it comes to alerting the traffic, it's to provide enough advance warning uh, for them to know about the work zone so they can adjust their driving, lower their speed, and be prepared for what to do as far as to get through our work zone safely. But so usually, and for some of the reasons for the workers being killed, they're not always killed by the motorists that are driving by. They're a lot of sometimes they're killed for internal reasons in the work zone. Maybe they got uh, killed by a piece of equipment or things like that. Um, so there's a lot of safety training that can be done. The workers can do for of everything they need to be alert of inside the work zone. But anyway, so those are some crashes do happen in work zones, and so we need to be aware of that, but do our best to use the typical applications and the signs that are listed in those typical applications. And then sometimes in the options in the typical applications, they talk about other signs to beef up the signage, especially for high speed conditions, like in a flagging operation. If you're working on a 2-lane rural road that's 45 to 55 miles an hour, you should throw in another sign into the mix that says be prepared to stop. So that's another example of things you find in the options. So if we take a look at a little deeper into these crashes that happened in 2019, you'll see that besides the fatalities, there was over 6,500 work zone crashes. So that boils down to 126 work zone crashes a week, or one work zone crash per week per county, or 548 work zone crashes a month. There was also some serious injuries. There was 129 serious injuries in these crashes. If we compared that to the total crashes in Ohio, there was 1,155 fatalities in 2019 and almost 300,000 total crashes, or 5,700 crashes per week, or 66 crashes per county per week, or 24,755 crashes per month. And there was almost 7,500 serious injury crashes in 2019. So there's some information for you about roadway crashes in Ohio. But some of the things you find interesting about work zone crashes is that there's usually a higher percentage of serious injury and fatalities in the total number of crashes in work zones versus all the other crashes. And so when a crash does happen in a work zone, you have a higher percentage of serious injury or fatality. So it's another reason to really take care of how we set up our advanced warning area, because that the advanced warning area, if we can just nail that, we can cut down the number of these crashes. So a little bit more about crashes. I've been talking to an organization called PERP in the last 8 or 9 months. PERP stands for Public Employees Risk Reduction Program. I didn't spell that word wrong, didn't I? But they sent to me some information on fatal work zone crashes in Ohio. And I just picked this one out. This is from a crash that happened on a 2-lane road in Ohio. If we take a look at the picture on the right, we'll see something that's typical in Ohio in our rural roads. We have you're driving along and you can there's a dip. There's a down. You're going to be driving downhill here, and so the the thing about this dip in the road is it's pretty significant. So you really can't see what's beyond that dip. You know, the sight distance isn't there. So if you have people working at the bottom of this dip, this car traveling 55 or 60 miles an hour down this road has no idea that there's workers there. And that's what happened in this particular fatal crash. The workers went out there and thought they could take care of something kind of quickly, and they didn't want to set up the advanced warning signs or have a flagger. And then a car came driving down through there and ran into somebody. So, this really makes me sad because it's like, it wouldn't have taken much to set up the work zone and alert the motorists, especially in situations where you have sight distance restrictions. So a sight distance restriction with high-speed traffic is where you have to take the extra precaution, and that's where you would use the options that are listed in the flagging operation, like the extra sign and things like that. So then they sent me the report on this as well, but it's just an instance where maybe this fatal crash could have been avoided with a little more care with the advanced warning area. Okay, so that's the end of part one. So in end of part one, we've learned about the temporary traffic control manual, the ODOT website, the LTAP website, on how to find different resources, how to get your own copy of the manual, and things like that. And do we have any questions so far, Mike, in the question box, or think we could
Nothing,
ask another question here?
nothing at the moment, Ray. Would you like to do some more poll questions?
Yeah, let's have another one.
Okay. All right, we've launched question number 2, and we'll see the responses. Okay, and we've starting to see responses now.
What was the question? I can't even see the
Oh,
question.
question number 2, the temporary traffic control manual is another name for part 6 of the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. All right, we've got nearly 80% have voted so far.
They get it
So
right?
another few seconds and
Well, that's good enough.
okay.
But
So Ray, 84% of the group said true, 16% said false.
all right. Well, it is true. So they're one and the same. Let's go ahead and ask another question.
All right. Question 3. Question 3 says the latest edition of the OMUTCD is the 2017 edition. True or false? True or false?
It might be a little harder.
And we see some responses arriving pretty quickly. Another few seconds. Okay. So Ray, 6% said true, 94% said false.
All right. The majority rules. It's incorrect. The 2012 edition is the latest OMUTCD. But we are hoping to get a new one within the next couple of years, hopefully. Who knows? Well, we have to wait. We have to wait on the national manual to be officially updated, and then we're given, I think, a couple years after that we have to update ours.
Ray, do you want to do the last poll question from lesson 1?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Question 4, it says the only reason we utilize the temporary traffic control manual is because it's a good idea. True or false? And votes are arriving now. Okay, about 70% have voted. A few more seconds. Okay, and Ray, 10% said true, 90% said false.
The falses have it. It's actually the state law that we use, the manual, remember? So that's the reason why a lot of work zone crashes, if they're significant, they could end up with a lawsuit or at least the threat of a lawsuit, and then they get settled out of court, those sort of things. So um, it's important to abide by the manual. You don't want to be the reason a work zone crash happened. So
All right, thanks,
I
Ray.
remember, okay, I remember years ago in Marion, Ohio, there was a fatal crash, and it cost the city of Marion over $4 million in a lawsuit. And that may have been 15 years ago. So um, that was the value of a human life, I think, at that time. I can tell you that the value of a human life went up significantly since then. So um, these are all reasons um, to make sure that we abide by the manual and try to, get the advanced warning area of our work zone correct. All right, well, let's move on to lesson 2, where we delve into talking about the different traffic control devices and safety hardware. So the purpose of our temporary traffic control devices is communication. If you think about it, how else could we communicate to the motorists as they approach our work zones? Could we send them a text message instead? Well, no, because we don't want people texting while they're driving, right? So that wouldn't work. So we haven't found a better reason. I mean, a better way of providing them with the information that we have a work zone ahead of them. So we really do need our temporary traffic control devices, and we want you to use the latest temporary traffic control devices. They're very bright. They really stand out. They have retro reflective paint or stripes on them, and you really can't miss them. So we don't want you to use the old faded tar covered cones or signs. It's important that you have the latest of these devices to add the level of safety we want in your work zones. But sometimes our communication efforts don't work because we have a special kind of driver out there called a stupid driver. Now, I don't mean to be mean or anything or a bully. I'm just saying, has anybody out there ever seen a stupid driver? You can be honest. You don't have to say it out loud, but just think in your head. Yeah, I've seen a stupid driver. So maybe you don't think that stupid drivers exist. So I went ahead and we have pictures of the end result of a stupid driver. So let's see. Here we have a 2-lane rural road. It's obviously closed with our type 3 barricades. We even got signage and a light on it. And this was more than a one-day project, so the road was closed at least overnight. And then, so when the workers came back the next day to get back to work on their project, this is what they found inside their work zone. They had a minivan that drove around the barricades and ended up like this. And so we had to call upon our trusty Ohio State Highway Patrol. There's obviously a 2-lane state route, and to come over and take care of business for us to get that minivan out of there. So that was not smart to drive around our barricades. There was a reason that road was closed, wasn't there? Okay, so our traffic control devices, they are essential to highway safety. They're recognized subconsciously by the motoring public. Motorists rely on them. And like I said, I don't know how else we could alert them of our work zones. How else could we communicate to them? So we really need these traffic control devices. And we have requirements for our traffic control devices. They must fulfill a need. They must command attention. They must convey a clear and simple message. And we need to place them so they give adequate time for the motorist to respond the way we want them to respond. How about this sign? Here's a good sign. And it's one of those signs that we recognize subconsciously. We know when we see the golden arches, we know right away we're very near a McDonald's, right? And so this is one of the reasons that we need standards. We want motorists to instantly recognize the meaning of our sign so they don't have to stop and think about what that sign means. You know, we need an instantaneous um, response from them. And so we do this by establishing uniformity through standardization. That's a mouthful, isn't it? But you know, the word uniform is part of the title of our manual, the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So when we establish uniformity through standardization, we're promoting a better recognition and understanding of our devices, a more consistent interpretation, more rapid driver response. We get motorist respect and even reduce traffic control costs if we're all using the same signs and cones. We get a better deal on them, right? So it's a win-win. Let's see if ODOT was holding up their end of the bargain. Let's see. Is putting duct tape on our sign the way to establish uniformity? No, we don't want duct tape. Plus, it probably wouldn't show up very good at nighttime, would it? How about here? We've upgraded to electrical tape. Doesn't look like it's very sticky though, so that's not doing a very good job. Or how about here? We got more duct tape covering up the left turn arrow for a certain intersection. That probably doesn't command a lot of motorist respect. By the way, these are very old signs. They're from the old days. I'm sure ODOT has never used duct tape or electrical tape anytime recently. Okay, this is ancient history. I'm just using this as a example. So our traffic control devices, there's different ways to be uniform. We want our devices to be uniform in the design or the application of those devices and the location of the devices. So there's 3 levels of uniformity there. So when I talk about traffic control devices, I'm talking about a whole list of devices. There's signs, there's channelizing devices like our cones and drums. There's arrow panels, portable changeable message boards, pavement markings, barriers and barricades. So all of these have their own section in part 6 of the manual to talk about. So let's first talk about our signage. What do they do for us? Well, they advise and warn drivers. They're placed in the advanced warning area of our work zones. And they have 4 ways that they communicate to the motorists through their words, color, shape, and symbols. And they communicate the same message redundantly through their shape and color. So let's have another quiz here. Everybody wake up now. Let's take a look at this. Can we tell what kind of sign this is, even though it doesn't have any words on it? How about this one up here? We probably can figure out, because it's the same color as well, right? We know what kind of sign that is based upon its shape. There's
Yep,
another one, the
Ray.
triangle. Yep.
Yeah, people are responding stop sign for the first one.
Yeah. How about the triangle here? What in the world is that?
Okay, we'll look for responses for that one. Yield. People are responding.
Yes.
Yield sign. Yeah.
And let's see. How about this one that looks like a house over here? What's this one?
Okay. School crossing.
That's right, a school zone. About a circle. This is a tough one. What's a circular sign?
And responses are railroad.
All right, the railroad crossing. And then we have the rectangle. What would be a typical rectangle sign?
Speed limit.
Speed limit. All
Responses say
right.
speed limit. Yeah.
But how about this one here? This is the one we're really interested in. This diamond shaped sign. Would a diamond shaped sign say?
All right. First responses are road closed, warning, work
Yeah.
zone, warning.
Okay. How about what if it's not an orange diamond shaped sign? Maybe it's a yellow diamond shaped sign. What would be a typical thing that sign would say if it was yellow?
Caution, deer crossing, left
Yeah.
arrow, school
Or it
crossing,
could be in advance of a curve. It could have an arrow on it in the shape of the curve that you're about to drive through.
stop
So it could,
ahead.
yes. So it's a warning sign. Anytime you see a diamond shaped sign, it's a warning. So you really want to pay particular attention to the diamond shaped signs. You need to share that with your loved ones and friends, whether it's yellow or orange. You really need to be on the lookout for the diamond shaped signs. So, yes, the shape of a sign communicates a message all by itself to the motorists. And then the same goes with the colors. So, a yellow sign would be your general warning. You need to really pay attention. It could be a sharp curve ahead or something like that. Red for prohibition, like stop signs or do not enter, wrong way. Blue is our motorist services guidance. Green for direction. Brown, recreational, cultural interest. And then orange. Orange for construction and maintenance. So as soon as you see the color orange, you should know instantaneously that you're about to arrive at a work zone. And white for regulatory. And we have another color called FYG for pedestrian crossings and school zones and bicycle crossings. So FYG has worked so well that it stands for fluorescent yellow green. It's done such a good job of reducing crashes in school zones that that's one of the reasons behind why we want our roadway workers to wear fluorescent yellow green when they're working in a work zone. So this color lets the motorist know that there's actually people in the work zone. And if we let the motorist know that there's workers in the work zone, we've noticed that there's less crashes that way. People respect that. So that's why you see, like in mobile work zones and things like that, you'll actually have a sign that says workers in roadway and things like that. Or there's the sign that you attach to the shadow vehicle that has the man with the shovel that tells people not only that there's pothole patching, but it reminds them that there's actually people in front of that shadow truck. So it's important that we communicate that there's workers in the roadway, and if you're not going to use the sign, that it's important that the workers have their fluorescent yellow green vests on or shirts on, and that they're not faded. They're still very vibrant, very colorful. In fact, some of the tags on workers' apparel actually tells you um, that you're only going to wash it like 25 times max, and then you get a new shirt. That's what you're supposed to do on some of the apparel. So you'll see the fluorescent yellow, green, and for pedestrian crossings, bicycle crossings, school zones, and the advanced warning for the school zone. We have different types of sign. There's that word regulatory. I was trying to say that word regulatory a little while back, and I couldn't think of it. Don't you hate it when you can't think of a word, especially when you're teaching a class? Believe me. So there's three types of signs: regulatory, warning, and guide. So the speed limit sign and speed zone ahead, those are the rectangular signs, and they're regulatory. So a regulatory sign not only is rectangular with a white background, but it holds legal obligations. So if you recall, I showed you that that intersection typical application where it said left lane must turn left. That was not an orange diamond shaped sign. That was a white rectangular sign. So that's a regulatory sign. So sometimes we have to use regulatory signs in our work zones. Most of the time when we do that, we're at an intersection. So we have to include those signs in intersection work, especially if we're going to be there for a while, more than an hour at least. Sometimes less than an hour if it's, we're talking higher speeds or higher volumes, things like that. So the place where the regulation becomes effective, maintain their colors in a temporary traffic control zone, and must be covered or removed if overridden by temporary signs. Let's take a look at some of these regulatory signs. We have our stop, yield, speed limit, etc. But down here in the bottom left, we have a left lane must turn left sign. There's also right lane must turn right, well, like we would use on typical application number 22. And so, so these are examples of regulatory signs. And yes, this is an old slide because look, this reduced speed ahead sign up here in the top right, the reduced speed ahead sign no longer looks like that. So if you're in a city or a village, your reduced speed ahead sign should now be a yellow diamond shaped sign. And in the middle of that sign is a picture of a speed limit sign with the reduced speed, like 35, and it has a black arrow pointing up. So this is about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. This was updated. Maybe it was even longer than that. I just keep this slide so I can say that. So hopefully the guys in class today that are from the cities or villages can tell us that they no longer have this old sign, but they have the new reduced speed ahead sign. Especially on the state routes that enter your city or village, you would have to have that sign in advance of your welcome to your village sign. So regulatory signs must be authorized by proper officials, so we always need to check before installing or removing. So there's that. Like, for instance, no parking zones or something like that. You would need to make sure you cleared that with the city engineer's office or village engineer's office. So then we have our warning signs, the ones we're more familiar with. So these are our orange diamond shaped signs, black letters that we place in our advanced warning area of our work zones. Let's take a look at some of these. Maybe you routinely use some of these, and maybe some of these you have never seen before, but we want you to be aware of them. So, everybody has seen let's start with this flagger symbol. It's kind of a newer sign. There used to be a sign that said flagger ahead spelled out, but we no longer want you to use that sign. We want you to use this sign, the symbol of the flagger. So if you still have the old sign that says flagger ahead, we want you to update it to this sign. Then we have this symbol. We use symbols in our symbols work really well in work zone signage because you don't have to read and you got a good picture. Helps you to recognize what's going on and prepare for it faster than reading. This particular sign, the man with the shovel, is the sign we want you to place on the back of your shadow vehicle if you're patching potholes in a mobile work zone type. So, there's other places you can put it. Maybe you're patching potholes on low volume, low speed residential streets. You don't need a whole bunch of signs on those streets. Maybe just this one that you're let people know that you're patching potholes. Here's another one I like to talk about. This third sign up here in the top row. It says be prepared to stop. That's the sign that I mentioned earlier for a flagging operation. So the people from the county engineer's offices, if you're flagging on your county roads and they have a speed limit of 45 to 55, then we really want you to use this sign in your sign package for your place in front of your flagger. So you'd actually have 4 signs in advance of your flagger. And this would be the third sign in your series. And that's talked about in typical application number 10 in the options. So it's been proven to make your work zone safer on those high-speed 2-lane rural roads. And of course, we got shoulder work. It's important to use the shoulder work sign if you're only working on the shoulder. You're not interfering with the lane of traffic. It's nice to let the motorist know that. Otherwise, they assume you're in the lane. And so and maybe they'll try to change lanes when they don't need to. So on a multi-lane roadway in the peak hours, we need every lane available to traffic. And so if you're out there working between 7 and 9 a.m. or close to the PM rush hour and you're not blocking a lane of traffic, we really want you to set up your work zone with a shoulder work sign, and that would be typical application number 4 or number 6. Okay, what else we got here? So now that we know everything about warning signs or regulatory, which kind of sign is this? I don't expect you to write it in, but I'll just tell you, it's a trick question. You usually don't see a sign like this because it says speed limit 35, but usually it's if a real speed limit sign would be a white rectangular sign, right? But then another way if you're going to reduce the speed limit in your work zone, which we usually don't do in typical roadway maintenance activities, you could attach a advisory speed plaque to the bottom of your work zone signage. Another thing about our advanced warning signs is that we have to space them in a particular way. And so sign spacing is critical. It says we don't want to create a situation like our buddy Ziggy is facing here in this picture. He sees all 3 signs in one spot: left lane ends, right lane under construction, think fast. So obviously there's a better way to sign that. We need to space the signs with a certain distance between each sign in order to give the motorists the proper time to analyze and decide on their maneuver. That's why every typical application, they not only tell us what signs to use, but they also show us the spacing recommended for each sign. So here in a flagging operation, you see the distances of A, B, and C listed between each sign. And so our job is now to convert that letter A to a specific number in feet, right? So to do that, we use the tables provided, um, like the tables on page 17 of the guidelines for traffic control in work zones, or it's also in the beginning of part 6 of the temporary traffic control manual. There's this table, it looks like this. So as you can see, we have an A, B, and C at the top of the table. And then on the left, we have the different types of roadways. We have a urban low speed roadway, urban high speed, rural, and expressways and freeways. So if you're flagging on a rural roadway, then A, B, and C would be 500 feet between each sign. So if we take a look, what is low speed and high speed? If we click this and we see that at ODOT we use 40 miles per hour and below as low speed, and 45 miles per hour and above as high speed. So if you're working on a 35 mile per hour city street or village street, then the distance between signs could be 100 feet apart. So that's a big difference between 100 feet and 500 feet, right? And then on a freeway, then we have a different value for A, B, and C in each one. So it could go from a half mile to a quarter mile to 1,000 feet between signs. So we have a 3-step process for our work zone signage. Like, how do we determine which sign says what? Well, the first sign is the sign where we need to get the motorist's attention, and that's the sign that says road work ahead. Or if you're a utility person, then you could also say utility work ahead. And then the second sign is where we tell the motorist what the situation is that lies ahead. So right lane closed is a sign, for instance, that we would use on a multi-lane road to tell them that the rightmost lane is closed ahead. And then the third sign is where we tell the motorist what we want them to do. So in that right lane closure situation, the third sign would be the symbol that shows the right lane merging over to the left lane. We also have specifications on the height of our signs, usually in our roadway maintenance activities that only last for a day at the most. Then you're probably using the portable signs. And so with the portable signs, they need to be no less than 1 foot above the traveled way. So they need to be on a proper stand so that the bottom of the sign is a foot above the traveled way. Or if you're using post-mounted signs, then they need to be at a height where the bottom of the sign is 7 feet above the traveled way in an urban area, or 5 feet above the traveled way in a rural area. And those post-mounted signs need to be crash worthy. So here's a picture of the portable signs. As you can see, it's on a sign support that where the bottom of the sign is a foot above the ground, or the traveled way, as it said. We want to be a foot above the pavement level. Another thing you see on this sign is the flags. You know, it's good to have those flags because it helps to draw attention to that sign. And you know, if you have a way to draw attention to the sign, we want you to do that. So flags are good, but we have other methods. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's have some more interaction, more discussion here in class. So let's take a look at this picture on the left. We have a 2-lane rural roadway, as you can see. And if I had to ask you a couple questions about your assumptions about this roadway, why don't you tell me what you assume the speed limit is on this road? And also, in your answer, tell me, would it be for a is it a low volume road or not? So you could give me a speed limit and yes or no, as in no, it's not low volume, or yes, it is low volume.
So Ray, several people have typed in 55 mile an hour. One typed in 45 mile an hour. Two typed in 35. Uh, one typed in 25. Um, most are saying low volume road. So we're seeing 45 to 55 low volume.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to debate you on these answers, people. Okay, so about the volume of the roadway, let's talk about it first. If we look at this roadway closely, we'll see that it's kind of like the Cadillac of two-lane roads. And I say that because it's got a white edge line. It has the painted dash lines. They're dashed, not solid. What else do we see? We see a paved shoulder, a berm, and we have utility poles. We take a look at those. The utility poles are placed at the very edge of the right of way. And so I say it's the Cadillac because where I grew up, along two-lane rural roads, there would be no pavement markings and no paved shoulder, and the utility poles would be up here by the white edge line, and the speed limit would be 55. So I believe it's a high volume road, and I say that because of the price that this agency put into this roadway with the pavement markings and such. And plus, when you see the utility poles at the edge of a right of way, well off the pavement edge, that usually means that this roadway is going to be, they're planning on it to be widened in the future. And so this is not a low volume road. It's a higher volume road. And as far as the speed limit goes, I mean, it could be 55 because, like I said, I know 55-mile-per-hour roads that are much narrower and and no pavement lines. Plus, you can see traffic coming at you here. If you look in the background, you can see looks like a couple trucks coming. And if you can see traffic coming, that's another hint that that is not a low volume road. You know, sometimes a low volume road, several minutes can go by and you won't see any traffic. But if traffic's going by, you know, every minute, then that's not a low volume road. It's usually 600 cars a day or less would be low volume. And I would say this road here probably has a few thousand a day just by what I see here. And so the point I'm making is that this is a higher volume road and high speed. And so in this particular situation, the work zone that we see should not be designed the way they have it. So these workers have placed themselves in a very dangerous spot, and the motorists are also, they've been placed in this dangerous situation. And because when you're closing a lane, and this is not a mobile operation, you know, they're not moving. So they're here to work on something for quite a while, it looks like. So there's only one typical application that fits this scenario. Can you tell me what kind of operation that they should be setting up for?
And Ray, as we look for people to type in responses, please be aware it's 11:29, Ray.
Okay. All right.
So we'll need to wrap up here in a few
All right,
minutes.
we'll do that. Well, the point I'm making here is I'll just tell you it's a flagging operation is what they should have been setting up for. So in a flagging operation, you follow along with typical application number 10, and that shows a minimum of 3 advanced warning signs. And we really want you to use 4. So we want you to include the be prepared to stop sign as well. and the flagger would be well in advance. There would be no sign right here. Okay, this would all be coned off. This would be in what's called the buffer space, and so the flagger would be well in advance, and there'd be a flagger on and signage on the other side of the work zone as well. Um, so this is the way they have it is not correct. It's an epic failure, I like to call it, and they could be a bad crash could happen there. And then over here we see that we have a sign that is not on the proper stand. It's touching the ground, so it should be a foot above the pavement. So I just wanted to show some pictures of wrong situations that we have. Sometimes we see out in the field. And anyway, I guess we can stop here for the day, and we'll meet again Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, right, Mike?
Yes.
And we'll start again in Thursday afternoon after that, starting at is it 1 o'clock?
1
Something like that.
p.m. Yeah,
Okay.
10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Thursday.
Yeah, so Thursday we'll go over parts 2 and 3, and we'll begin Thursday morning where we left off and show some more temporary traffic control devices, different types, and then we'll begin lesson 3 as well after that. So I want to thank everybody for participating today, and like I said, you all get a certificate sometime soon for this. So every time you attend one of these sessions, each session you'll get a certificate for each session. Anything else, Mike, you want to say before we close?
I think we're good for now. So thanks everybody for attending, and we look forward to parts 2 and 3 on Thursday. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.